Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. Now, some German media have been pointing out a curious little cultural anomaly in the heart of Berlin, the Russian House. It's still operating freely, even though its parent organization, called the Russian Federal Agency for International Humanitarian Cooperation, has been under EU sanctions since 2022. Now, officially, it's a center for cultural exchange, a place to watch Soviet films for the 12th time and reread Tolstoy under the faint smell of borscht. In practice, it's a hub where Moscow keeps pushing its soft power. Political messaging, influence networks, and the occasional cultural attaché who seems unusually interested in security briefings. According to The Telegraph, the Russian house looks harmless from the outside. Film screenings, art exhibits, shelves of classics, and just enough flags to remind visitors where the great culture comes from. But German MPs, especially those from the CDU, see something else entirely. A base for Russian operatives working under the cover of nostalgia. Just to reiterate, the center is managed by the Russian Federal Agency for International Humanitarian Cooperation, an organization already linked in multiple countries to so-called soft intelligence. After EU sanctions, several states, including Moldova and Azerbaijan, shut their Russian houses. Germany hasn't, likely fearing that Moscow might retaliate by closing the Goethe Institute. So while Berlin debates, the Russian house quietly screens old spy films where the KGB is always a hero. You see, the Russian house is like a nesting doll. Culture on the surface, politics inside, and somewhere at the core, intelligence work. If Germany won't shut it down, it should at least put an honest warning label on it saying propaganda may occur. Because when the Kremlin's cultural diplomacy still gets a stage in an EU capital, it's not about literature anymore. It's about keeping the story alive, one screening at a time. Kremlin mouthpiece Vladimir Solovyov seems to be having a tough week. His nerves are cracking live on air. Now, in his latest broadcast, he shouted that Russia isn't responding at all to the systemic destruction of its oil refineries. He fumed, how can Ukrainian fragments, he called drones, keep falling, yet somehow always hit their target? Solev, my dude, you're this close to getting it.
Смотрите, мы же видим, что сейчас происходит. Наносится активный удар по нашим нефтеперерабатывающим заводам. Это что, Украина делает? Да нет, конечно. Это через Украину выбивают британцы и те же американцы, которые дают разведданные и доводят. У меня только один вопрос. А мы когда-нибудь уже начнем обращать на это внимание? Сколько раз на этой передаче я поднимал вопрос о ПВО? Нет, я понимаю, что, наверное, гениальная идея отключать мобильный интернет, и от этого сразу перестает все лететь. Я понимаю, что гениальная идея вводить ковер, после чего вдруг люди не могут перелететь и в сезон отпусков сидят в аэропортах. Это здорово помогает. Я только не понимаю, чему. Потому что это все здорово помогает, но только обломки, как сейчас говорят, сбитых беспилотников наносят такой ущерб, что не понимаешь, а за это кто-то отвечать собирается у нас в стране?
Whatever he wants to call them, those fragments keep doing their job. Ukrainian drones have been systematically disabling key parts of Russia's oil industry. And from the looks of it, the fuel crisis isn't a temporary glitch, it's becoming a long-running genre in Russia's warfront. According to Bloomberg, citing the International Energy Agency, oil processing rates at Russian refineries will stay low until at least mid-2026. In just the first 10 months of 2025, Ukraine carried out at least 111 drone strikes on refineries and oil depots in Russia and the occupied territories. Crude oil processing has dropped by 500,000 barrels per day. Several regions are already facing gasoline shortages. Drivers are counting liters, and taxi drivers joke that they're now running on patriotism. Meanwhile, Solovyov keeps demanding a decisive response. Maybe another studio rent, maybe more table banging for morale. On the ground though, Ukrainian drones follow a simpler doctrine. Less oil, less war. Russian TV can talk endlessly about down fragments, but every refinery that goes up in smoke drowns out Solovyov's voice. While he yells about the need for action, Ukrainian drones keep moving, no slogans, no theatrics, just results. Speaking of oil refineries and protection, Russia has launched a new military initiative. And as usual, it smells of desperation. According to Kommersant, 20 regions have started recruiting reservists to guard critical infrastructure from oil pipelines to power stations. Sounds serious, except for one small thing. They began recruiting before the law allowing such units even came into force. In Russia, it seems, they don't wait for legislation, they improvise and then legalize later. Reservists are supposed to defend oil and gas facilities, mostly from Ukrainian drones, which lately have done more damage to Russian refineries than any repair team in the last 3 decades. The Second Army of the World is now defending its oil industry with old rifles and warehouse guards because its air defense can't keep up. See, this story sums up Russia's current state pretty well. The army is fighting, air defense is exhausted, refineries are burning, and now reservists are being sent to watch over pipelines. The image of a military superpower has shrunk to a man in a booth guarding a gas tank. Instead of strength, there's fatigue. Instead of defense, paranoia. The Second Army of the World, instead of taking new grounds, is now trying hard to stop the leaks. Alright friends, today's closing comedy segment is brought to you by Olga Skabeeva, the Kremlin's chief rocket fairy. Now in her show, she proudly announced that Russia's nuclear triad has been modernized and it's now the most advanced on the planet. Judging by her tone, I actually think she believed it.
Итак, в Кремле заявили, что ядерная триада России обновлена прямо сейчас. Она является самой современной на нашей планете. Президент США Дональд Трамп при этом продолжает усугублять ситуацию. На форуме в Майами он выдал новую партию довольно противоречивых комментариев. В очередной раз он ошибочно заявил, что у Вашингтона больше ядерных боезарядов, чем у Москвы. Вновь сообщил, что отдал Пентагону приказ немедленно начать испытания ядерного оружия, при том, что за ядерные испытания в США отвечает не Пентагон, а Министерство энергетики. Также Трамп сообщил, что оружие массового поражения ему все же не нравится. Он сторонник денуклеаризации, хочет якобы разработать план, в соответствии с которым США, Россия и Китай откажутся от ядерного оружия в принципе.
But in Russia, modernization usually means a fresh coat of paint and some electrical tape. Skabeeva, as always, in her comfort zone, rocket, fear, pathos, and just enough lies to hold the plot together. After all, Russia's main weapon isn't a Samurad missile, it's television. From there, you can launch anything. Not into orbit, but straight into the minds of the viewers. And inside those minds, the nuclear triad is cutting edge. It flashes, buzzes, and rumbles. Perfect propaganda. Even comes in cartoon form. According to Russian TV, Moscow already leads the world, in space or on land, but that pesky reality keeps ruining the script. But every time those advanced missiles face a real test, the result is always pretty much the same. Smoke, noise, and a lot of silence after the launch. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.